Hello, my name is Samuel Martin, and for my final presentation, my final project for seminar in corrections, I'm doing my project on mental health and corrections. A little bit about myself. I got two bachelor's degrees, one in criminal justice and one in psychology. So this is actually a topic that I'm pretty familiar with and have gained a lot of knowledge on just through my undergrad. To begin, a little bit of the background on the current situation of the corrections system and mental disorder. All these statistics come from research done by Hendrick, Swart, Ama, Polsey, and King. Currently, 56% of prison inmates have some kind of mental disorder when entering prison. 20% of jail detainees also have some kind of mental disorder. 39% of those with mental illness will then someday reoffend. And being in a country where there is such a high recidivism rate at 67%, it should be a top priority of our corrections administrations to deal with those that have mental disorders that are in our corrections facility, because they do take up such a large percentage of the people in the system. If we can help them and find a way to bring their deal with their problems and bring those populations down, it should, in theory, help with the current recidivism rate of all prison inmates. Next, to fully understand why there is the problem there is in the current corrections system and with mental disabilities within the corrections system, it's important to understand the history and how people have viewed mental illness and corrections together throughout human history. 6,500 BC was the first study of the human mind, and they attribute this study to the Egyptians based on findings on paintings on walls. Next, in 400 BC, Greek philosopher Hippocrates was the first to give an explanation other than supranational reasons. So, at first, throughout human history, it was usually determined that mental disorder was due to some kind of spiritual imbalance, or a lot of time it was demons taking over a person when they acted unnaturally. But Hippocrates came up with the idea that people had four fluids within their body, and they were equally balanced amongst one another. And if one of those fluids were imbalanced to the other ones, they would become unhealthy. They would have mental problems and that kind of stuff. So it was really the first time anyone used a scientific or health approach to why people acted unusually. Next comes the early 16th century, saw the first asylums, and as one could expect, these were not up to the standards of what mental health hospitals are today. They actually were more like torture hospitals than anything else. People would be put here. They'd be covered in their own filth. They'd be treated like animals, left in hay, left outside. And many times they would just be tortured because they were acting unusual and different. And people still believe that there was some kind of spiritual reason behind their characteristics. Then there was the 18th century, saw a huge movement in the human rights of mentally ill and asylums. This was another time where it got away from the religious belief, and people started to see that the mentally ill were still people, and they were not animals, or they were not demons or monsters or anything like that, and that they needed help, and they needed ways to cope with their problems for themselves and for the people that surrounded them. To continue on with the history lesson, 1756 saw the first American asylum in Pennsylvania. Benjamin Rush was a huge backer of the human rights of the mentally ill, mental hospitals, mental asylums and that kind of stuff. And because of this, because he had this strong push for the human mind and approaching mental disorder from a scientific and medical standpoint instead of a spiritual, he is known as the father of American psychology. Dorothea Dix is another big name in American history when it comes to psychology. She was a huge human rights activist for those with mental disorders and problems of the mind, getting rid of several asylums that did not meet up to code or treat their patients with basic human rights. Next, we have psychoanalysis and jails. This is, since the 1970s, this has been a real approach to dealing with the mentally ill. Instead of sending those people to mental hospitals or to receive some kind of treatment, it has been seen that it's better or a more logical approach or more financially safe approach to send the mentally ill to jails. And as we continue on, we'll see the problems that this creates and the overpopulation that it has caused in the American prison system. Moving on, here are some American corrections and mental health statistics that prompt the study that the main focus of this presentation will be on. There are 383,000 inmates that have some kind of severe mental illness, 15% of the prison population, 20% of the jail population. The mentally ill, on average, serve sentences twice as long as the regular population. And a lot of times this is due that because they are also twice as likely to break facility rules, meaning they get time for prison, they go in, they break rules, they get time extended to their sentence due to the fact that they are breaking the rules within the facility. So, now to the research that the presentation is on. The research that we'll be studying is based on a court in Clark County, Nevada, that offers help to those that are arrested to crimes that are directly correlated with a mental illness, or if they are found to have a mental illness after they are arrested. It is, as it is said, is eligible for those with serious mental illness or history of serious mental illness. It also has a second section for those with drug problems. What it does is they are found guilty, and instead of going to jail, they are offered counseling or counseling programs in substitution of having to spend jail time. This was established and founded in 1992, and their data and records will be reflected in the slides ahead. Now, on to the research. The research was titled Rearrest and Links to Mental Health Services. It was done by Heidi Hendricks, Sandra Swart, Shane Alma, Sherry Dolzad, and Steve King. This again was a study of the Clark County court system in Nevada, and it was a study of 383 mentally ill cases in 2000. And the main purpose, to make this very, very simple, is to study the recidivism of each case, thus finding whether there was a correlation to the court's counseling programs and recidivism rates. Meaning, if a person with a mental illness who was found guilty of a crime received these counseling sessions, would they be more or less likely to end up committing a crime or even the same crime once again? The methodology of the research was very simple, to be frank. There was 338 cases, and they followed each case around for a year, and they watched for any signs of crime or rearrest, or especially for those that committed the same exact crime. They then took these groups and they split them into 4 groups. There's the pre-graduate group. That is the group that got that received the program before they were let loose of jail. Then there was the postgraduate group that received it after they were released from their sentence. There's the pre-non-graduate. These are the people that did not graduate from the group before they were released or before they went away. And then there's the post-non-graduate group, and this group is the group that did not graduate after they had been released. These are the results the researchers found. Those who received counseling before incarceration were twice as likely to reoffend than those who received it post-incarceration. Graduates of the program were 3.7 times less likely to reoffend than non-graduates, and overall, the program reduced recidivism rates 4 times in mental health cases. Overall, the researchers determined and came to the conclusion that counseling can be very, very successful in lowering the recidivism rate of those with serious mental health illness. Although this is a great study, there are some problems and criticisms with it. There's a lack of diversity in the population. It's one county, it's only 383 people, and we're never really told what their mental health problems were. The length of the study. This was only a couple years long. Someone could commit a crime 5 or 6 years down the road, and most would determine that was still that the program did not help. The location of the study, again, it was only in one location. It wasn't several different courts. It wasn't several different programs. It's different in different regions or even in different countries. So there's some validity lacking there. As previously mentioned, there are some conclusions to this. The mental health services and correction systems can help reduce the recidivism rate with there being such a large population of mentally ill. If we can find a way to reduce their recidivism rates, the recidivism rate as a whole will lower. There is an importance to when the counseling is administered. When it comes to pre or post, it does determine the factor of, the likelihood that a person is going to reoffend and how effective the counseling is. And finally, programs like these are effective. The mentally ill, when they're given help, when they are allowed to speak and identify their problems instead of just throwing them in jail and locking away the key, it can really, really help them in the long run. Finally, here are the references to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a topic that is very close to me and I'm very passionate about, and I hope that it has opened some eyes to a problem in our country that seems like can be an easy fix.